There's a version of you that only shows up at night, not on social media, not around people, just you, lying there staring at the ceiling, and in that silence everything becomes clear. You remember what you were supposed to do. You remember how much time you lost, and there's this quiet weight in your chest that doesn't judge you. It just tells the truth. You're not tired. You're avoiding something. That moment is uncomfortable, so most people escape it. They grab their phone. They distract themselves. They sleep it off, but the truth doesn't go away. It just waits for you again tomorrow. Let's stop lying to ourselves. You're not lazy. If you were lazy, you wouldn't feel frustrated after doing nothing. You wouldn't feel that tension between who you are and who you know you could be. That tension is proof. There's a part of you that wants more, but there's another part that's been trained to choose comfort instead, because that's what this really is, training. Every time you delay something important, you're not just postponing a task, you're teaching your brain. This is how we deal with discomfort. Every time you choose distraction over focus, you reinforce a pattern and your brain pays attention. It adapts, it memorizes, it automates. So one day you don't even decide anymore. You just react. That's why it feels so hard to change. It's not just about effort. It's about going against a version of you that has been practiced for years. And here's the part that's hard to accept. You already know what to do. Wake up earlier. Start now. Stay consistent. You've heard it all before, but knowing has never been your problem. Doing is, and the space between those two. That's where your self-respect slowly breaks, because every time you say, "I'll do it later," and you don't, something small inside you weakens. Not your ability, your trust in yourself. And without self-trust, discipline doesn't last. You can't rely on someone you've proven unreliable to, even if that someone is you. So this is where it changes. Not with a big plan, not with motivation, but with one decision: to stop breaking your own word. Start small, not impressive, not perfect, just real. Pick one thing you said you would do, and do it. Even when it's inconvenient, even when it feels pointless, even when no one is watching. Especially then, because every time you follow through, you repair something. You rebuild trust. And slowly, you become someone you can depend on. Discipline is not about forcing yourself to be strong. It's about becoming someone who no longer negotiates with excuses. You don't need a new life. You need a new relationship with your own word. Because the moment you start keeping it, even in small ways, everything begins to change. There's a pattern you keep repeating, and you barely see it. You sit down to do something that actually matters. For a few seconds, you're there, focused, ready. Then something shifts. A slight discomfort, a small resistance, a quiet thought. I'll just check this for a minute. And just like that, you're gone. Not physically, but mentally. You didn't choose to quit. You just drifted away. That's how procrastination really works. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's subtle. It doesn't say destroy your future. It says take a break, you'll come back. But you don't. And deep down you know that. Let's be honest in a deeper way. You're not avoiding the task. You're avoiding the feeling that comes with it. The pressure to do it right. The fear that you might fail. The discomfort of starting without certainty. So your brain does what it's trained to do. It escapes. And it escapes intelligently. It gives you acceptable distractions. Scrolling but calling it rest. Watching but calling it learning. Waiting but calling it timing. So you don't feel guilty right away. But later, it hits you. That same quiet moment. That same weight in your chest. That same truth. I did it again. This is the cycle. Discomfort, escape, temporary relief, regret, repeat. And every time you go through it, you make the loop stronger. Not because you're weak, but because your brain is learning. Escape works. So if you want discipline, you don't just fight distraction. You break the escape pattern. Here's the shift most people never make. Stop asking, how do I stay focused? Start asking, why do I leave? Because the moment you feel like escaping, that's the real work. Not before, not after. Right there, When you feel that urge to check your phone, to delay, to walk away, pause. Don't act immediately. Just sit in it. Feel the discomfort fully, the restlessness, the pressure, the urge to move. Don't label it. Don't run from it. Just notice. This is what I've been avoiding. At first it will feel intense, almost unbearable. But here's what most people never experience. If you don't escape, it passes. Not instantly, but gradually. And when it does, something changes. You realize the feeling wasn't the problem. Your reaction to it was. This is how you rewire your brain, not by forcing yourself to be perfect, but by proving to your mind that discomfort is not danger. Every time you stay instead of escaping, you send a new signal. We can handle this. And slowly, your brain believes it. So the next time the urge comes, and it will, don't try to be strong, be still. Because discipline is not built when things feel easy. It's built in the exact moment. You want to walk away, but don't. You don't lose to distraction. You lose to the habit of leaving yourself the moment things get uncomfortable. Break that habit, and everything else starts to follow. The hardest truth isn't that life is difficult. It's this. At some point, you stopped trusting yourself, and it didn't happen all at once. It happened quietly. You said, I'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow came, you didn't start. You said, just this once. But it became a pattern. You made small promises, and slowly you became someone who breaks them. Not to other people, to yourself. And that's where everything begins to fall apart. Not in your routine, not in your habits, but in your relationship with your own word. Think about it. If someone kept telling you, I'll be there, and they never showed up, would you trust them? Would you rely on them next time? No. So why would your mind trust you when you've been doing the same thing? Every time you say, I'll do it, and you don't, you weaken something. Not your ability, your self-trust. And without self-trust, discipline doesn't last. Because discipline isn't just action, it's belief. The belief that when you say something, you follow through. Right now, there's a gap in you. You can feel it. You think about doing more, but you act in smaller ways. You see a better version of yourself, but you keep feeding the current one. And that creates tension, a quiet kind, but constant. You start asking yourself, why can't I stay consistent? Why do I keep falling back? But the real question is simpler. Why do I keep breaking my own word? This is not about motivation. This is about integrity. Integrity is not just about how you treat others. It's about how you treat your future self. It's about whether your actions respect the life you say you want. So how do you fix it? Not by going bigger. Not by trying to change everything overnight. That's pressure, and pressure doesn't last. You fix it by going smaller, more honest, more real. Make one promise, something simple, something you can actually keep. Not impressive, but true. And then keep it, even when it's inconvenient, even when your mood changes, even when no one would ever know if you skipped it, because that's the moment that matters. Every time you follow through, you repair something inside you. You rebuild trust. And slowly you become different. Not louder, not more motivated, just more reliable. You stop negotiating with excuses. You stop waiting to feel ready. You stop needing the perfect moment. Because now it's not about feelings, it's about alignment. At first it feels small, but over time it becomes identity. You start believing yourself again. And when you trust yourself, you move differently. You act faster. You hesitate less. You don't fight yourself as much. That's discipline. Not force, not pressure, but a life where your actions match your words. You don't need more motivation. You need to stop breaking your own word. Because the moment you do what you said you would do, even in small ways, you begin to rebuild the one thing. Everything else depends on trust in yourself. There's a quiet question most people never ask themselves. What version of me am I feeding today? Not the version you imagine becoming. Not the one you talk about, the one you reinforce with your actions. Because at the end of the day, you don't become what you want. You become what you repeat. Most people think discipline means forcing themselves to change, trying harder, pushing more, waiting for motivation. But real change doesn't start with effort. It starts with identity, the person your daily actions are slowly building. Every small action is a signal. When you avoid something important, you strengthen the version of you that escapes. When you delay starting, you reinforce the version that hesitates. When you choose comfort every time, you train your mind to settle. And over time, it stops feeling like a choice. It starts feeling like who you are. That's why change feels difficult. You're not just trying to start new habits. You're trying to stop being someone you've practiced being for years. Your brain protects what is familiar, even when that familiar life frustrates you. Even when you know you want more, familiar still feels safe. So every time you try to act differently, there's resistance. A quiet pullback to the usual pattern, and most people follow it. Not because they want to stay stuck, but because it's easier than becoming someone new. But discipline grows in very small moments, moments people usually ignore. When you want to delay, but start anyway. When you want to escape, but stay. When you want to quit, but continue. These moments seem small, but they shape identity. Every time you act differently, you weaken the old pattern, and you give space for a new one. At first, it feels unnatural, almost like you're pretending. That's normal. It means you're no longer running on autopilot. Because the old version of you was automatic, comfortable, predictable. But the new version requires awareness, choice, repetition. And if you repeat those choices long enough, something powerful happens. It stops feeling forced. It becomes normal. You no longer need motivation. You simply act. That's when discipline stops feeling like a battle and starts feeling like identity. You don't change your life in big dramatic moments. You change it in quiet decisions that nobody else sees. So pay attention to what you feed, because every small action is a vote for the person you are becoming. You keep thinking you have time. That's the lie. Not the loud kind. The quiet one that lets you delay without panic. I'll fix it soon. I'll get serious next week. I'm just not ready yet. And it feels harmless until you realize you've been saying the same thing for months, maybe years. Here's what makes it dangerous. Nothing feels wrong in the moment. When you delay, nothing breaks. When you avoid, life still moves. When you choose comfort, everything stays quiet. That's why it's so easy to keep doing it. There's no immediate consequence, but there is a cost. It just doesn't show up right away. It shows up later, when you see people moving forward and you feel left behind, when opportunities come and you're not ready, when you look at your life and it doesn't match what you imagined. That's the real cost of undisciplined days, not failure. Drift. You don't fall apart overnight. You slowly move away from the life you could have built. One delay at a time, one excuse at a time, one tomorrow at a time. And the hardest part? You're aware of it. You feel it in small moments. That quiet discomfort, that internal tension, that voice that says, "This isn't who you're supposed to be." But instead of facing it, you soften it. You justify. You explain. You wait for the right mood. And that's where you lose. Not because you're incapable, but because you keep negotiating with the very habits holding you back. At some point, you have to see it clearly. Every time you choose what's easy, you're choosing a smaller life. Not instantly, but eventually. And no one is coming to interrupt that pattern. No perfect moment, no sudden motivation, no external force, just you and the decisions you keep making when no one is watching. This is where discipline becomes real. Not in big goals, but in quiet honesty. You have to stop asking, "What do I feel like doing today?" And start asking, "What does my future require of me right now?" Because your future is not built later. It's built in these small, ordinary moments you keep underestimating. So the next time you feel the urge to delay, pause and be honest. Not emotional, not dramatic, just clear. If you do this again today, where does it lead? And if you don't, what changes? Because discipline is not punishment. It's direction. It's choosing the version of your life you actually want, even when it costs you comfort now. At first, that cost feels heavy. But what most people don't realize is this: The cost of discipline is always smaller than the cost of regret. You are not stuck. You are just repeatedly choosing what keeps you here. And the moment you stop choosing it, even in one small decision, your life doesn't magically change, but it finally starts moving in the right direction. There will come a point where everything inside you goes quiet. No motivation, no urgency, no excitement, just a flat, heavy feeling like nothing you're doing matters. You wake up and the drive isn't there. You start something and it feels pointless. You try to care and you can't find the energy. And this is where most people stop. Not because they failed, but because it stopped feeling worth it. This is the part nobody prepares you for. The middle, not the beginning where you're inspired, not the end where results show, but the long stretch in between, where nothing seems to be happening. No validation, no visible progress, no proof that what you're doing is working. Just effort going into silence. And your mind starts asking, what's the point? Is this even working? Why keep going if nothing is changing? So you slow down, you skip a day, then another, then you stop completely. Not with a big decision, but with a quiet fade. And this is where most people misunderstand discipline. They think discipline is about pushing hard, but real discipline is about continuing when it feels meaningless. Because the truth is, progress is invisible until it isn't. The work you're doing right now, the small actions, the repeated effort, they are building something. You just can't see it yet. Like roots growing under the ground. No one claps for it. No one notices. But without it, nothing above the surface survives. And your brain hates this phase because it wants evidence. It wants results. It wants confirmation. Without it, it starts pulling you back to what's easy. This is where you need a shift. Stop relying on feelings as proof. Feelings change too quickly. Instead, rely on decisions. Quiet ones. Firm ones. The kind you don't argue with every day. You decide, this is what I do now. Not when it feels good. Not when it's convenient. Just consistently. Because if you keep checking how you feel, you'll keep stopping. But if you follow what you decided, you'll keep moving. At first, it feels mechanical, almost empty. But that's the point. You're no longer depending on emotion. You're building stability, and over time something shifts. Not suddenly, but subtly. You notice it's a little easier to start, a little harder to quit, a little more natural to continue. That's the rewiring happening. Quiet, slow, real. So when it stops feeling worth it, don't stop. That moment is not a sign to quit. It's a test of whether you're serious, because anyone can move when they feel inspired, but very few can continue when nothing is telling them to. You won't always feel driven. You won't always feel clear. But if you keep showing up anyway, without needing to feel something first, you build something stronger than motivation. You build consistency. And consistency is what turns effort into a life you can actually recognize. There will be a day you mess it up. You won't plan it. You won't expect it, but it will happen. You'll skip what you said you'd do. You'll fall back into old habits. You'll lose control for a moment, maybe longer. And right after that, a familiar voice shows up. Here we go again. Nothing really changed. This is who you are. This is where most people lose everything. Not in the mistake, but in what they believe about the mistake. Because one bad day doesn't destroy discipline, but one bad story about yourself does. The moment you slip, your mind tries to make it mean something. Not just I made a mistake, but I am the mistake. And once you believe that, you stop trying. You turn one missed action into a pattern, one delay into a full stop. Not because you have to, but because it feels familiar. This is the trap, all or nothing thinking. If it's not perfect, it's pointless. If you messed up, you might as well continue. If you broke the streak, you already failed. But that mindset was never discipline. It was pressure, and pressure always cracks. Real discipline is not about never falling. It's about how quickly you return. Think about it. The old version of you would slip and stay down. One day turns into three. Three turns into a week. And before you know it, you're back in the same place you tried to escape. But the rewired version of you falls and shortens the distance back. You don't wait for a new week. You don't wait for the right mood. You don't restart perfectly. You just come back immediately, because the goal is no longer perfection. It's consistency over time. And consistency doesn't mean no mistakes. It means fewer gaps between effort. So when you slip, don't panic. Don't overanalyze. Don't punish yourself. Just be honest. That wasn't it. And then move. Do the next right action, even if it's small. Even if it feels insignificant, because what matters most is not the size of the action. It's the decision to return. Every time you come back quickly, you weaken the old pattern. The pattern of quitting completely. The pattern of disappearing when things go wrong. And you build something stronger. Resilience. At first, it won't feel powerful. It will feel simple. Almost too simple. But over time, it changes everything. You stop fearing mistakes. You stop needing perfect conditions. You stop collapsing after one bad moment. You become stable, and stability is what most people are missing. Not talent, not knowledge, just the ability to keep going, even when things don't go perfectly. So the next time you slip, and you will, remember this: you didn't lose your progress, you just paused it. And the longer you wait to return, the heavier it feels. But the moment you act again, you're back. You don't become disciplined NY avoiding mistakes. You become disciplined by refusing to stay down. Because it's not the fall that defines you anymore. It's how fast you decide to stand back up.